is Laura. I am from Wisconsin, the middle of the USA. I'm a nearly 40-year-old artist, teacher. I'm a solo mom of two kids. I have an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old. My oldest was diagnosed autistic when he was about 4. Aside from my experience as an educator, this was really my first kind of immersion into the world of different neurologies. And looking back now, I know so much more now than I did then, which I guess is a good thing. So when it comes to my own personal journey and my history, I'm currently kind of in the messy middle of unmasking and becoming more aware of my own neurocomplexity. So this process has meant a lot of kind of piecing together different events from my past just through hindsight and, looking at those events through this new kind of unmasked lens, which can be both enlightening and challenging because we also, we need to get through the day-to-day tasks in front of us, and sometimes that requires a mask. So I'm having to sort of go through every single aspect of life and look at it differently. I don't know if I quite fully have the words for it yet. So in the past 5 years or so, like broadly, that's I think when this whole process kind of kicked off. I was kind of sent me into this whole like total reinvention of life. Circumstances happened that were not in my control, and I had to make a lot of really hard decisions in the course of just a few months. I went through a divorce, declared bankruptcy, sold our house, moved back to my hometown with my parents. I'm still there now. And, through all of this, I did not make these decisions with the intention of unmasking and finding my returning to my true self, but that has been, without a doubt, the underlying, silver lining of all of this. So in 2019, at that point in time, I was really living what I think a lot of people would consider kind of the middle class American dream. And I kind of refer to this as like the before times, or what I now know it was very much my extremely masked life, knowing what I have come to learn. I was a much loved art teacher at a primary school. It was a sought after school district, a very quaint, lovely suburban town. Married, 2 kids, cute house, right across the street from where I taught. So everything on the surface appeared to be really great. But in hindsight, again, my marriage was never quite right. And I knew he always struggled a lot with his mental health, but it just sort of got pushed to the side. And I would keep adding on things. Well, let's get married and that'll fix it. Let's have a baby. That'll fix it. Let's have another baby and that'll fix it. So he was my first love. We got together and moved in together when I was 20. And so I just didn't have any comparison. And long story short, the way this all kind of wound up is that when we separated because of his, unaddressed needs and his lack of interest in addressing them, or I shouldn't say interest, but his lack of, he just couldn't. It wasn't a question of won't. He really wanted to do the right thing. But he didn't have the resources or the support other than me, and it was too much. So he ended up dying by suicide in 2021. And so I mention that because his life and the way that his life ended was kind of the final building block for me when it comes to this whole topic of masking and raising a child who has a different neurology, and then starting to realize that I too have a different neurology. That these are sort of like the 3 big building blocks when it comes to my experience with masking and how life-changing and painful it can be when someone doesn't have the understanding or the support to feel safe enough to begin to unmask. And so, my kid's dad never had a funeral. He never had a celebration of life. His family was just it was just too hard. And so I consider what I am doing for myself and for my son, especially, he doesn't attend school. I'm keeping him home. We're focusing on relationship. We're getting the right medications in line. We're doing everything possible to create this safe world for him where he feels comfortable to be himself. And for me, that is how we celebrate his dad's life, because he did not have that, unfortunately, to no one's fault. But so that's kind of my background, and why this project spoke to me. So, what I've learned about my own mask, I'm still very much discovering all the ways that I have been masking for my whole life, but it's especially apparent as a parent, a mother. It became really hard for me to maintain my mask once I became a mom, just because of all of the overstimulation and all of the things coming at you at any given moment of every day. And especially as a mom, when I was working full time, um, with two small kids and a partner that wasn't always able to contribute as much as I might have wanted him to. Um, so that, I think, I consider that my very, in hindsight, that was the peak of my masking. I wouldn't ask for help. I wouldn't admit that I was stressed. And it almost became, my husband's struggles at the time sort of ensured that I kept my mask in place, because I could almost use that as an excuse for me to not actually really look at what was going on for myself. I kind of put his needs before my own, and my children's and everybody's. And so that worked out pretty well. It worked out that I didn't have to really face what was happening for myself. So in these last, just the last probably 6 months or so, I really started to examine my own neurology and what my own mask looks like. And so this has been a lot of piecing together different events and experiences from my life in hindsight, and looking at them now through this lens of, masked versus unmasked. So for me, masking, again, it looks like, not asking for help or not admitting that I need help, being, extremely independent. It also, I think there's a layer of it that includes kind of almost a self-sabotage situation where something always seems to kick over into the realm of chaos. Like I will let something get to the point where I'm either so fed up that I can't function, or I'm so tired that I can't function, or something. I will keep things at this kind of level of, if not chaos, then just like dysfunction, so that I don't have to say, this is hard, I need help. The decision is made by whatever events are happening that seem to be out of my control. So that's really been the big one that I've been working on, is catching myself before it gets to this point of, okay, I need a break, and I'm going to simply ask for that break instead of waiting until I am at my absolute wit's end. And everyone else says, hey, I think you need a break. So that's definitely a big one. And, because essentially what's going on there is that I'm not trusting what I can, that I can read my own system and understand what I need and then stand up for what I need. So there's a lot of codependent traits that come along with my mask: people pleasing, making sure everyone else is okay, doing everything I can to keep everything at an even keel, including myself. And even and never really acknowledging that I am a human and I can't possibly be an even keel. Like I can even remember when I would struggle being on my period, and I would hide the wrappers. I wouldn't put them in the garbage can because I didn't want people to see that I was on my period, and that could be affecting my behavior, that would, my behavior was happening anyway. So that to me was the biggest specific thing where I was like, oh my goodness, this is definitely my mask here. So it's been a process to understand what exactly it looks like, and to know when it's being useful, because sometimes it is, it plays a role, and when it's to my detriment. So when it comes to feeling and being unmasked, I'm still learning what that feels like in my body. And I don't know if that's ever a process that's over because I think the first step is accepting that I have to fill up this mask and that it is something I need to start to peel away. But acceptance for me is not a place where you achieve and then, it's like healing. There isn't a finish line. It's the same with acceptance. You can climb up to that point and be there, but you don't always stay there. And for me, that is the challenge, is staying in that level, in that place of acceptance so that I can keep working on learning how it feels to be unmasked and to, without shame, keep going forward with that whole process. But what I've learned so far is that it feels like everything inside of me just sort of settles. It feels very much like, if you imagine a snow globe or something that's all shaken up, um, I realized that that shaken up feeling is what I was feeling almost all the time. And when I catch myself in moments where I am just allowing myself to be who I am and how I need to be given that particular moment, whatever is coming at me, even in the face of really hard or stressful things, if I know that I'm coming at it as my unmasked self, I feel this sense of settled. Everything that was shaken up is starting to settle. And so that's a whole new feeling. And I also would tend to feel like almost like that eggshells feeling. We talk about walking on eggshells around certain people, but I felt very much like every part of me inside of me was made of eggshells. And so like the slightest thing could just shatter it. And who knows what would happen then, like it just felt like, oh, I cannot possibly take any of this off or everything inside of me is going to shatter. And so I feel that softening a little bit too. But again, it's a in and out kind of process, like so many things. I cannot always stay there. And I don't think I don't expect to. That's how it feels to me to be unmasked.
So, to my younger self, I would say to use your voice and don't be afraid to go ahead and speak up. And I would also say don't feel bad when you can't, because quiet is necessary. We need the observers, and you're going to take all of that information that you're observing and you're going to turn it into something beautiful. So, if I could go back in time and say anything to that younger me, I think that would be it. That there isn't any shame in being quiet. There isn't any shame in standing to the side and not being the center of attention. Not everyone is meant to be that way. And that doesn't make you bad. It just means that you are watching the world from a different angle and you're picking up on details that other people are not seeing. And that's what makes you you.
So when I think about the question, what do I wish they knew? I guess I feel like I want to address everyone in this question, but that's impossible. But I guess given my experience as a parent and having lost someone really close to me, um, mainly due to his challenges with masking, I want to say to the people who are currently in this process to keep going, because I really think, even though it is so hard and can lead to so much pain, and this world is not, it's just a scary place when you don't fit the mold. I I really, really hope that you keep going, and we need you here. And I think collectively, there's already such a shift happening. It might be hard to see, but please just keep going for those of you who are in this process. I think that's the other thing I want to mention too, having been married to someone who couldn't acknowledge the level of masking. It was so deep and so affixed to his entire being that he would not hear any conversation that along these lines that would, admit that he needed to look at his struggles through a neurological lens. So I want to normalize the fact that sometimes people are not going to choose this route. And at that point, the people near them need to then make the decision, can I support this person and still maintain my health and my well being? And if the answer is no, then, then that's, you're right. You can't, if someone is not on the same path or willing to see what needs to be done, then taking care of yourself first is the number one goal. So I think I know I had a moment of pause and thinking, well, I know that he's not in control of these behaviors. I know that this is his brain. I know it's not that he's choosing to behave this way, but yet he was still behaving that way and not able to get the help he needed. So I think it's important to consider that side of this whole process too. That, yeah, it's amazing and wonderful when people are willing to go down the road of unmasking, but it's also messy. It doesn't always end in a very sparkly, happy place. So if you're in that spot, uh, I feel for you, and I hope you're able to really take care of yourself. And to everyone else who's kind of maybe supporting someone through this process, you need to keep going too, because the kind of love that is required when you're supporting someone who is discovering their true nature, I think it's that kind of love that is really what our world is missing. Right now, a lot of us are thinking, what can we do? What is it that, there's just so much wrong with our culture. And a lot of us are just so stumped, like it feels like we can't do anything. But if you happen to be someone who is supporting a child through their own, neurological discoveries, or, you yourself, or you and a family member, a friend, it doesn't matter, whatever it is, that love between those, surrounding that situation, that is it. That is what we need to expand. Um, the kind of love that allows people to be exactly who they are, that will save us, is my opinion.